I know this question will seem naive to our sophisticated community, but I cannot help myself. After reading the latest Insider and several before it, why are there not more people speaking out about the damage climate change policy is causing, what BlackRock is up to, etc.? I believe you completely about what is happening, but there are days where I still can't get through my head as to the complete lunacy of it all. As a side note, there's a Canadian website called Friends of Science who also called out the IEA report and cited the JP Morgan analysis that you mentioned, Chris. In Canada, Trudeau has said we will reduce our emissions 45% below 2005 levels by 2030. This website attempts to explain what our life would look like if these policies are pursued, and I will let the surprise out. It's not good. Yet the press, all politicians, including conservatives, and the public say absolutely nothing. I mean, can we no longer think? I know I should be asking an investment question, but this is really bugging me. I don't know where we fell so far off the rails. Thank you to yourself and the entire team for helping us out. Yeah, Michael, don't worry. You're not alone on that one. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, look, I mean, we've been here before. Mankind has been here before. It's the fourth turning.
Yeah, fourth turning.
If you haven't read the book, go and read the book. It'll help you understand the context of where we're at and why we're at there. You know, I often use that graphic, which is weak men create bad times create strong men create good times, and you go around in cycles, and it's no surprise or secret as to where we are now. Justin Trudeau is not the strong man.
Yeah.
He's out there with the sundress on, and so
it's a bad image in my head right now.
So
you're right.
The only way we get out of this is to get out of it, right? And that's going to be extraordinarily painful. No, this is not going to work. Of course it won't. It's going to create a devastating collapse in the standard of living for people. There's no way out of that I can see. This is a freight train that's at this point unstoppable because it's ideologically driven, not driven by facts, not driven by science, not driven by data. It's driven by ideology. And if you look through history, ideologies don't burn out.
Right.
They collapse, or they are hit with massive force and are forced one way or the other. This is unlikely to be any different, which is why I talk about this entire geographical macro outlook, because I think it's more important than any. I think if you've got a macro analyst out there and they're not paying attention to this, I think they've completely missed everything that's important right now.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I'm not sure what your question is. The point is that we've been here before. Propaganda works. We're going to just have to go through this. But the positive is that ordinarily the entire world doesn't go down one path. One can hope that's not the case. Yeah. Certainly, we don't believe it to be. We can see those splits taking place. And you and I, Gene, were talking about it just before we jumped on to do this webinar. We will see splits taking place. And you want to be cognizant of that and making sure as best as you can that you're positioned with your capital for that, and potentially with your person as well. You know, the past our lifetimes, we've never really been in a situation where we've had to sit there and go, I might need to move.
Right.
Right. And it's been more a situation of, I'm kind of pissed off where I am, and this isn't great, and there's somewhere better.
But it hasn't been life or death yet.
Yeah. And that's changed significantly. And there are people who are aware of it. Most are not. But it is what it is. You can't change that. So you can try and, back to the previous Lady Eugene's question about waking people up. And it was Eugene. It's not a waste of time to try and do that. I really don't think so. Right. Because it just takes a small turn and a small. You can read history and it's often phenomenal what can happen that you don't think would have happened. So that it's not futile to fight, but have a plan B.
Good points. Good points. A couple things to add here. Neil Howe and Strauss wrote that book in 1997, The Fourth Turning, for those who haven't read it yet. And if you listen to that book or you read that book, it sounds like they wrote it yesterday, the way it sounds. And another thing that Neil says is that when we return to a first turning, governments traditionally or typically have more control than what they started with in the fourth turning. So that's another insight as to how this will most likely unfold. It will unfold with the government probably rolling into a first turning where we go into prosperity again, but they have all the control. So start making your adjustments now. What do you think?
Yeah, the other thing with that level of control doesn't necessarily have to be a worse situation than you have in now. It could be. And look, the reason why you get to that is because in periods of chaos and economic destruction and murders, deaths, wars, things of that nature, people look for strength. Yeah. They look, and societies look for basically a man on a white horse. And they'll come together to fight a particular force. In order to fight a massive force, you actually need collectivism. So most of us are libertarians. We're not collectivists at all.
We're the opposite, yeah.
But going with the period that we're going through now, we're actually going to need collectivism. Good
point. Very good point.
As much as we don't philosophically necessarily align with it, us libertarians, because we just want to live our lives and be left alone.
Exactly.
We don't want to be part of some big group, and we just like, just leave me to do my own thing. I just want to be free. But when you're faced with a big force, it's like Gene ringing me up as a neighbor going, buddy, I need your help. Get the guns.
Yeah.
Right? So that's collectivism. That's like us coming together to deal with a situation. So when you come into a first turning, it is that collectivism has formed a new entity which has extreme total control because it has to.
Has no point. Yeah, choice.
In order to fight off whatever force it's dealing with. So,
I think one big thing to add too is at some point, and this is an aha moment to me. I was in Yosemite with a really good friend of mine, and we were up in the mountains and we were shooting guns. He had like an AR-14, a bunch of pistols and stuff. And the game warden rolls up on us, and we're like, "Oh shit, we better hide the AR-14," because it was one of these ones that he built. And the game warden happened to be a really cool guy, but he was telling me, because we were having this conversation about BLM riots and that kid Kyle, I can't remember what his name was, but he ended up becoming kind of a martyr. He had a gun. He went out and ended up shooting a couple of BLM guys.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And I made the comment. I was like, man, what that kid wasn't. I was like, what a moron! Like, why would that kid do that? And this game warden says, hey man, at some point we're all going to have to pick a side, whether you like it or not. This is just the way it is. And that kid just chose to pick a side that night. Yeah. And that was like, that left me thinking. The gravity of that response was like, oh shit, you're absolutely right. You can keep running and you can keep running and you keep running, but at some point you're going to have to pick a side and be prepared for that.
What you're seeing in the US at the moment is the precursor to that. What you're seeing is people going to their own kin. It's you potentially moving to Florida or Arizona, out of California, and many others moving around to their kin.
Finding their tribe.
Then, once you've found that, you've got nowhere else to run to, or you're not prepared to run anymore. Now you have to fight. If that force keeps coming at you, you have to fight. So what do you do then? You get organized. You talk to your neighbors. You start community. Boom. So now you have collectivism.
Yeah.
And even frenemies. Old guys who you didn't have any affinity to, but now they have sufficient reason to take the same side as you, become your friends.
Right.
So collectivism forms, and we decide where those borders are drawn, and we decide what that new who wins that ideological war. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit like what's that famous saying of I can't remember who said it. It's like, oh, how do you go bankrupt? Oh, it was slowly at first, and then it was all at once. You know, that's the same thing. It's slowly at first, and then it's all at once. So that kid doing what he did, that was just something out there.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know, but there could be something like that actually ends up being the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Right.
Boom. And it's like Mohammed Zufari, whatever, the guy in Tunisia who set himself on fire.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Couldn't feed his family, and he was being taxed and blah, 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 blah. Now, I suspect that there were many like him beforehand who had committed suicide because they were just at a wit's end.
Right.
Or had taken extreme measures of some sorts. Maybe they had attacked a police officer, whoever. But we didn't really hear about them.
Mm-hmm.
And so for whatever reason, that was the one that just lit the entire Arab world on fire. And within 2 weeks, you had entire countries that were just on fire. So we're in that little eye of the storm right now, and you don't know what that particular catalyst is going to be, but it's coming. History indicates it's coming.
Yeah.
So